Hi, it's TamikaChambers, and welcome to another episode of the Seeds We Plant series, where I've been looking at the weeds are the consistent negative emotions and feelings that we can plant inside of us, inside of our heart, which is the soil for our garden. Whatever we continue to think about, whatever we continue to do, continue to believe about a situation, we continue to impress it upon our heart, where things will germinate, thoughts will germinate, they will sprout, and they will grow into a harvest unless we intercept that harvest. And I've shared before how I was new to garden. Oh my gosh, new to keeping a garden. and I went outside to my garden and I was just so excited for everything that was growing that I just happened to come to a place in my garden. And I saw this beautiful looking plant and I said, wow, that's interesting. And a further when I looked down, when kind of stooped down further to look at it, and I saw that it had its little line, like an arm around a plant. And I didn't realize at the time that that was actual a weed. A weed was growing next to something that I had planted, a seed that was going to be fruitful, vegetables. I had rows and rows of just seeds of vegetables, squash, you name it. And here was something trying to take that away, that nourishment, that life that was in that plant. And I believe when we allow negative emotions, feelings, thoughts, reactions to confiscate or to take over our garden, which is the fertile ground of spiritual fruit, which we have been given by our Creator, when we allow those to take over, we slowly suck the life out of us. And I've said before, and I've written in one of the manuscripts I have that before there is a physical death, there's a death that occurs on the inside. That often we can forget who we are because of all this stuff we've allowed to crowd out the spiritual truths that we have. And much of that stems from our own power to control how we think, to control what thoughts we accept and the ones that we have the power to reject. And I remember as a child, and I knew, I think there's so much that we know as children, and we can allow our experiences to turn us around, to turn us away from our truths. And I remember just, if people said something about me, I would reject that thought. I would literally, if I couldn't do it with my mouth, like my mother or an elder person, or now you're supposed to be respectful of your elders, your aunts, your uncles, etc. If I couldn't do it physically, I did it mentally. So whatever they shut out, if I didn't like what they were saying, if I didn't resonate with it, if I felt like that was dangerous, like poison, I would literally reject it. And I didn't know that. A lot of stuff that we knew as children that again we somehow forget it, but it's still within us. It's still within us. There are things that you knew as a matter of fact as a child that you've allowed yourself to be infected by it. One of that is resentment. If you have feelings toward somebody that you are consistently playing over in your mind, feeling like they've wronged you, you will often find out, and you probably have seen that the more and more you think about something like that, some projected pain, and remember, pain um, does not discriminate. Color, race, religion does not. It wants to grow just like any other thought that grows and wants to make more of itself. that if you are having that, eventually that changes you from the inside out. And I've said it before where we have to look at and see, is that something I really, really deserve? And that was one of the things that as a child, I remember saying I didn't deserve to beat myself up, to put myself in a bad situation. Because I remember thinking, thoughts of resentment, thoughts of what I didn't know was resentment, thoughts of vengeance. I knew that, getting back at the people. But having those thoughts and how they can make you they can change the way you speak to people, they could change the way you speak to yourself. You become more sarcastic. You can think about and say and continue to attract people that continue to do you wrongly. We wonder why we keep getting in abusive or relationships where our relationships, I mean, like spousal relationships, marriage, I mean, significant others. I'm talking about jobs. I'm talking about social groups. I'm talking about any type of relationship where you are with another person or you have made this pact with the person, sign an agreement with this person, and we want to know why we are still in those situations. Because it's like we are this seed, and within this seed, we have things that we are growing inside of us. And whatever you're growing inside of you, you become. And it's like when you get that picture, it may change you all at once, or maybe it's a process of change. But when you get that picture, something happens, something clicks that you're just like, wait a minute. You mean to tell me I am ruining my life because of what somebody did years ago that I keep talking about? That you don't realize that the more you talk about it, it's like you're watering your garden. You are providing nourishment to you're nourishing something painful. And to nourish something painful, sometimes we can keep messing with something that it hurts even more, that it's not healing. It's a wound that never heals. And when it never heals, you have scabs, you have reminders that it happened. And so when we talk about conscious awareness, when we talk about really being our awareness, our consciousness, and becoming spiritually um, aligned with the truth, resentment has no place in it, just like any other weed. And intellectually, you can see that, but it's like you want to feel that. You want to truly own and feel your right to grow whatever you want in your garden. Your right to physically sit down and assess those thoughts and assess what do I keep talking about? What has happened to me that I have not let go? Every time you talk about it, or when somebody mentions it, or they mention that somebody that hurt you was successful, do you get bitter? Do you start having negative thoughts? Do you feel anger rising within you? Are you always talking about what someone else did? Or you start being grateful that you're not in that environment? Are you grateful that it didn't become worse? Are you grateful that you have your health, that you have your voice, that you have another opportunity to do what you love? Because we have to be careful. Life will bring out not only things that are blatant and we can see, but also those hidden scars, those hidden things that we don't want to admit to. And somehow or another, we will find out. Even you, just if you hear, hearing this podcast and those things that I did ask you, how do you feel when someone is successful? I know how I felt. Initially, I was just like, crap, they don't know the truth about that person. They don't know what he did. They don't know that he was part of it too. And you just feel like you're taking the blame for the whole situation. But what you can remember when we talk about the seeds we plant and we talk about forgiveness is that every cell in your body knows what happened. When we talk about forgiveness versus grudge, which one of those do you want to continue to feed into future generations. I do believe that when we hold on things, it affects our cellular disposition, the atoms, the energy. That's why we continue to attract things because attracts attract, just like a magnet. And you think about the North and the South poles, that whatever it is, it tends to attract itself. And we think about those incidences, those circumstances that we find ourselves in, and we get angry and we get even more upset. And if they hadn't have done that to me, then I wouldn't be thinking about it. And if this wouldn't be happening again. But the center of every experience is ourself. We are it. And to know, like when you think about books and you think about the Course of Miracles, and that is it that we don't want to give up resentment or these thoughts because we're afraid of who we are? That when we come to the truth of the matter and realize that much of what we experience is because of our power to create. Because if I am holding on to resentment and the laws of the Creator are in my heart and in my mind, the very places that I can sow positive and negative thoughts, the very places where joy comes from, the very places where I can create the life that I want, gets tainted with resentment. How does that show up in your life? Does it show up that you have bad deals with people, that people undermine your work, that people use you? Because if it is, then resentment may be at the root may have taken root inside of your garden, your heart. And so whatever we plant, we will harvest if we continue to put it in the right environment. Resentment, the right environment is continually attracting resentment and feeling resentment and continue playing it over and over and watering it over and over and over again to lose an abundance of resentment. Resentment towards your children, resentment towards teachers, resentment toward law enforcement. Because what we hold inside affects the choices that we make. It affects how we raise our children. They see it because they they haven't experienced everything that we experience. They see what we often don't see, that we're resentful. And the more they're exposed to it, the more they start picking up, well, life is just, it sucks. And they take on a disposition that we have. And then you may also too get some of what you put out from them. Then we just think our life is just heck, all because of something that somebody else did. And we don't realize that somebody is ourselves. That's who it is. So how do you get past resentment is acknowledging that it's there. And as I was reading the definition of resentment, I could see that. I could see that growing within me in different stages. I could see that happening. And until we are honest with ourselves, as my mother always told me, until you accept the truth, then you can move forward. So the first step is actually acknowledging and being honest with ourselves that, I'm still playing what that person did in my mind. I am still hurt. I feel hurt. But to realize when you are honest with yourself, I feel hurt because I choose to feel hurt. Because I am consciously choosing to feel hurt by something that was done in the past. And when we are honest, we can say, I put that label on that experience. I chose to label it as something not to get over, something to continue to talk about, something to carry in my life. And when we're honest with ourselves, we realize that one choice can change the outlook of my harvest, can change the outlook of my family that I am raising, can change how I feel about myself and how I feel about the world and how I feel about others. that people are not out to get me, and maybe people will stop being out to get you, that the world is safe, that, and when you start thinking about that, it's like, well, how can I see that? How can I see that? How can you not see that? Because if we know that everything we do has a direct and indirect impact on the collective consciousness of this world, then it's our duty and our right to start thinking about this world in a way that's going to benefit it and not continue to sow the seeds of resentment and all of those other like-minded weeds. Because if you truly believe that what you do impacts the world in some way or fashion, how you treat one is a domino effect, how they tend to treat others if they don't intervene in their heart, if they accept your resentful acts. Because you've heard of stories, and I know Louise Hay, she talked about it in her book, Dr. Wayne Dyer, Joseph Murphy. I'm reading one of his books, Traveling with God. And I just feel like everything he's saying, I get it. And it's stuff that is like, it's kind of, some of it's kind of like, making me stand up tall, hitting like a little peck or a little slap across the face. Not so much in a bad way, but in a wakeful way. That, oh my gosh, that makes sense. Talking about reading about how we are our thoughts. We are the reflection of our thoughts. And so if we continue to hold negative thoughts, we cannot ask ourselves, and I've written about this in the book, and I said, oh my gosh, we cannot ask ourselves, where did this come from? It came from us. And until we take responsibility of our thoughts, will we continue to put things and our emotions, will we continue to put things out there in the world? That it's not just about being positive, but it's being accountable. It's being responsible, self-care. It's being true self-expression. Because again, I don't believe that we were put here to struggle with diseases and illnesses, to struggle with our emotions because we are the master. We don't have the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-control. And if we can see that, if we can hear that in other books, and we can want that, desire that, that is our true desire. That is truly who we are. And if we allow ourselves to believe that we deserve better, if we allow ourselves to believe that we are the master of our emotions and feelings, that we can choose to have a spiritual perspective on life, that nothing defines me, that I can't be defined, I am greater than any experience, and that I have the divine right to protect, to preserve, to embrace, to nourish, to express the real seeds within me, the spiritual seeds within me, the love, the compassion, the hope, the kindness, that no matter what someone else does, I will continue to remain as I am. And it becomes more than just words. It becomes a declaration. It becomes a consistent shielding off negative thoughts, a consistent reminders, affirmations, positive reminders, consistent spending time with self, consistent seeking the spiritual nature of experiences, continue to seek the God within. Because there are a lot of beliefs that we have, but the mind and the heart is not being consistent. If we believe that God created everyone in his image, then God is within all. There's no stupid, there's no dumb, there's no other labels that we tend to want to put on people. And then we wonder how come they act like it. Because that's what they're hearing. That's what somebody is consistently saying. And because of the place that they're in, that's what they continue to accept. And we change the world by changing our thoughts about people. Because until we actually know, like, live their life in their own shoes and had every single experience, can we truly say, and even then, but try to say, "I would have done different than you." We don't know what was going through their mind every day. We don't know what they were being told every day. We don't know how low they felt about themselves every day. We don't know the mental struggles and turmoil that they had. So the judge won without knowing what they've been through. I don't think is who we truly are. It's one thing to have knowledge. It's another thing to put it as a label. And I will not say, and I hope you don't say, that I am resentful, because wherever you put I am with, that is who that is who you associate with. That is what you associate with. Instead of saying I am my true expression. I am healed. I choose. I am the master of my emotions and feelings. I choose to control what I plant inside of me, because I know that it's going to have effect on others. And my children deserve better. They weren't here. They deserve better. And my children's children deserve better. And I'm going to leave a legacy that comes from the inside out. So the seeds we plant can go either way. We can plant love or we can plant pain. And I know there are no opposites, but I'm thinking about, some say there are no opposites. But when you think about fear, you think about courage, the opposite. When you think about hate, you think about love. When you think about divisiveness, you think about unity. So we have a choice in deciding what it is that we want to. And I know it seems unfair. Why should I be free? Why should I plant good when I don't feel like it? The more you own who you are and the creative power that you have and the creative intelligence that you are, the more you will see that none of those things, none of those weeds belong in you, that you are greater and you deserve better. This is TamikaChambers with the seeds we plant, looking at the seed of resentment when we're lingering, allowing past experiences to linger on, and how we continue to nourish them with our words and our actions, and how we eventually retract that which we are. When we become resentful towards others, we tend to continue to attract those behaviors, and we wonder why people are treating us the same way. Until we change our thoughts, which is the whole premise of this, the whole what this podcast is all about. Until we change our thoughts, do we then start to see a change in our lives, individually and collectively. It is our responsibility. We are accountable for what we hold in our hearts, and we get to choose. Our We get to choose, we get to accept or reject the thoughts that we don't want to become. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening. And please share if you feel like anyone could benefit from this podcast, this episode. Thank you so much. As always, make this lifetime great, because no matter what, you still can.